survive a spiritual awakening? And what is life like after you have a spiritual awakening? So I'm going to start with what is life like? And everyone's story is going to be different, but if I had to say what life is like, I would just say that it can be very lonely at first because you're going to go through a period of isolation. And as scary as it may be, as frustrating as the isolation period may seem, it's completely necessary. I talk about on my channel a lot about the metamorphosis stage of the caterpillar to the butterfly, and how the caterpillar goes into their cocoon completely by themselves and they literally transform into a beautiful magical butterfly. That caterpillar does that alone. They isolate alone. They go through that for a reason. If you ever read the book Hungry Hungry Caterpillar, if you look at it, if you read that book from a spiritual perspective, all the way down to him eating all the BS food and then finally eating that nice green leaf and having enough energy to start his metamorphosis and go into the cocoon, that's a very spiritual thing. And you have to look at it like that. Because if you look at the isolation period as punishment, it'll almost destroy you. If you look at it like that, it becomes a more beautiful, positive thing. And you start to understand that I'm going through this because I'm transforming. I'm becoming a completely different person. How am I going to transform if I'm around all the same people I was around before? I'm trying to get to my highest self, while these people that I'm around are a big reflection and a reminder of who I used to be. It's not going to be easy to maintain relationships with people who are not willing to grow, period. Whether you're spiritual or not, it's going to be hard because you're trying to move to a different state of being and a new life. These people are not going to understand that. And if anything, they're going to hinder you from it, because you changing and moving into this new you is a reminder to them that they are the same. And they're going to laugh at you. They're going to mock you. They're going to try to stop you. It's going to get ugly. Okay. It's going to get ugly, and they're not going to understand. It's not for them to understand. You got to understand as a person, as a human being, a spiritual being, whatever, you have to understand that you came here for you. You did not come here to be a people pleaser and appease the crowd and your peers. They were there, they served their purpose, and they may or may not come back into your life later, but we'll get to that. But your journey is your journey. And if you focus too much on what your family and your friends and your coworkers think, you're going to ruin your journey. How could you possibly allow people around you to stop you from moving into the life you are being called to move into? That's with anything. I don't care if you say, I'm going to be a famous actress one day. 9 times out of 10, your family and friends are not going to support you and they're going to laugh at you. But what if you're really meant to be that? What if you're really meant to own that restaurant and be that writer or be an astronaut or be whatever? What if you're really meant to be that? What if that's really your destiny? You think that these people laughing and having something to say holds that much weight in your life? You're going to stop them? You're going to stop your journey? You got to stop doing that. Which is why isolation is almost forced upon you, because your higher self and God is trying to get you somewhere. How can they get you anywhere if you're still holding on to the past? Let the past go. Sometimes, even through the isolation, you may circle back later and have relationships with these people. But right now, you have to be alone because you need to discover yourself. And God is basically going to break you down to nothing, because he needs to remove all the filth that you were taught. Remove all the trauma that you're storing in your body. Remove the everything that you knew, and you're going to basically relearn. It's just like in the Matrix when Neo, he was like a baby in that it was like a womb or something. I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but y'all, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. He was reborn when he chose to walk this new path and escape the Matrix. And that's why it's scary. That's why it feels lonely, Because it's supposed to be, okay? So number one, isolation. That's part of what it's like after you have a spiritual awakening, and just know it's necessary, okay? So the next thing I would say, and there's a lot of controversy around this, but you either know or you don't. You are going to start understanding that you were always different, to the point that a lot of things that people either made fun of you about or you didn't think much of is actually your spiritual gifts. You're going to understand that you're very spiritually gifted. So for example, one of the first things that started happening to me when I started my spiritual journey is having premonitions. So I would have dreams of things and then they would happen. And that was like really freaky to me. Like, how am I having a dream of something and then the next day it's actually happening exactly how it happened in my dream? That's one thing that'll happen for some people, if that's your gift. A lot of people, especially women, who I believe all women are very highly spiritual. Some of us tap into it and some of us don't. Your intuition will start to heighten a lot. You'll start to be like, feel like something's going to happen, then it happens. You'll be like, oh, somebody's going to call me, and then they'll actually call you, or anything like that. You may even experience like some type of telepathy thing. This is something I had like with my own mom, like my whole entire life. I'm going to think something, like I can think of a song, she's going to start singing it. I can think of an entire like meal, she's going to make it, or she's going to be, oh, I want to do this. Like I would think things, and then people would say them or make them or do them or whatever. So that's something that can happen. I'm not going to get into the whole thing with spiritual gifts because it's just so broad. There's so many different areas that we could talk about, but that's one thing you'll notice, that although your spiritual gifts are growing and they're heightened, they were always there, okay? Another thing that may happen after you have your spiritual awakening is you may start to understand your place, and you'll start to understand that everyone who is a part of the spiritual journey has their own place, if that makes sense. And you'll begin to understand that although the beginning of the journey is really about you, we're here for the collective. Every one person who wakes up is meant to wake up more people. However many people that may be, you understand your place. So usually my feminines, y'all fit into your place before the masculines. Y'all figure out who you are, what you're supposed to do. And that could be anything. There's so many different ways. I tell y'all, it's not about you being a yoga instructor and doing spiritual cleanses in the river. Like it's not always going to be like that. You may be a musician, you may be an artist, you may be an actress or an actor, you may have a restaurant, you may be a writer, you may be a director, you may be a school teacher, you may just be a mom or a dad. Like everyone's going to understand their place, and you don't have to fit. You don't need the beads, you don't need the turbans, you don't need the crystals, you don't need the tarot cards, you don't need none of that. And I want people to stop jumping into things because you see other people do it. If you're called to it, it'll call you until you go to it. But don't just say, oh, this person is doing this, so maybe I need to do it. No, you're going to find where you fit in. So for example, my YouTube channel, a part of my moving from my south node to my north node for my astrology people was about me using my voice and expressing myself in some type of way. There's many different ways you can express your voice, but God wanted me to start here. He wanted me to start with YouTube. He wanted me to move into a spiritual teacher role. That does not mean that I'm going to be in this role forever. Most of the time, spiritual people are very gifted and we're multifaceted beings. So we're going to do multiple different things in this life. This is just the beginning to get me started. That's my role, is spiritual teacher. A lot of women go into that because women's intuition, wisdom, feminines are wisdom. I said all that to say that you're going to find your role, you're going to find where you fit in, and you're going to understand your place in the collective and why it was important for you to find yourself, because if you don't find yourself, you are not going to be able to help the collective in the way you're supposed to. Something else, I don't know if people ever talk about this when it comes to like what's life like after a spiritual awakening. A lot of people, especially the feminines, usually go into celibacy, and they change their idea of relationships and sex and love completely. If you're in my collective, you're probably going to relate to this. It can be hard to get into relationships after you have a spiritual awakening. And it's not just because people just think you're weird or something. Like, it's so many different reasons. Like, for one, spiritual... Okay, so I'm going to say it like this. For me personally, I would have a very, very hard time dating a spiritual man or religious man or a man of God, okay? I don't have a problem with men like that, and in a perfect world, yeah, that would be great. But the reason that a lot of feminines have issues is because a lot of these masculines who are spiritual are actually very narcissistic, and their ego gets out of control. Like, I'm speaking from experience. I've never dated a spiritual man, but since I've started this channel, I have encountered over the internet a lot of religious and spiritual men, and they are extremely narcissistic. Extremely. Their egos are usually out of control, and they're very entitled, and they just... The audacity is what I'm going to say. The audacity. Like, the things I've been told, and like, it's a mess, and I'm completely turned off by it. Not saying every man is like that, but it's like, once you become a spiritual woman, part of you wants a spiritual man, but then when you see how these spiritual masculines act, a lot of them are just not it, okay? They're just not it, and that's just my opinion. Don't get your feelings hurt. If the shoe doesn't fit, don't wear it. That's just my opinion. But yeah, part of that, at least from the feminine point of view, you really learn to know your worth, and your standards just go up, because you're like, wow, I'm really God's child. Like, I'm a really divine being. I'm not who the world tried to paint me as. Like, I'm really up there, and that's okay. I feel like as a woman, you should hold yourself to a higher standard. Don't look down on people, of course, but hold yourself and your standards high. Know your worth. Preserve your body and your essence for the right person. And you just kind of get to a point where you're like, I don't really care to be in a relationship. Like, yeah, I want to get married one day. I want to have connections, and I want to have a partner, but it's not that serious. Sex is not that serious. Being in a relationship is not that serious. I'm not pressed for it. And you may in the past have been pressed. That is what happens when the little girl grows into the grown woman. You're not pressed for romance. You are so in love with yourself, and God made it that way on purpose. You went on your self-love journey. You love yourself. You're comfortable with your own skin. You're not about to chase anybody. You're not worried about anybody. You're focused on your coin, on your practice, on your journey, your relationship with God. Like, I'm not, and again, it's not that we're not open to it. It's just the feminine does not chase, we attract, we receive. That is feminine energy. So therefore, I just don't have to chase anything. God is just blessing me. He's giving me everything I need because I'm showing up as her. So as long as you show up as her, we understand the right masculine will come along when he's supposed to come along. Or if you date feminines, the right feminine, the right person will come along when it's time for them to come along. I'm not worried about that no more, okay? So yeah, that's something that may happen after you have your spiritual awakening. I hope that made sense. And quickly, I will address how to survive the spiritual awakening. The best way to survive a spiritual awakening, one, I know everyone has different beliefs. My channel is very mixed, and it was divinely guided to be that way. For the haters in the back, my channel is mixed. if you believe in God, number one, stay focused on God. That is the greatest advice I can give you on how to survive this spiritual journey, because you're going to have several awakenings in this life. But also, you have to focus on love of self and knowing thyself. But the biggest thing I teach on my channel is self-love. Like, you really got to learn to love yourself, because loving yourself will save you from a lot of low quality experiences. But with loving yourself, you have to know yourself. You got to know who you are, because your family's going to test you. Your friends are going to test you. They're going to side eye you. They're going to look at you like you're crazy. You have to know you. You got to know who you are. And you got to know who you truly are without the opinions of the world, which is part of the isolation. Who are you? What do you stand for? You got to stand for something. You got to have your own values and beliefs and your morals that you stand on no matter what, because life is going to test you. The enemy is going to test you, okay? So know thyself and love yourself, okay? Next thing, of course, you really got to get in where you fit in. Find your place on your spiritual journey. Like I said, the place you are now may not be where you are later, but wherever you're called to be right now, at this point in time, in this season, get there, stay there, and don't half-ass it. Do the best you can with it. Yes, take breaks. Yes, take time to reflect and take vacations and all that, but make sure that you're focused on whatever it is that God is calling you to do, because it'll keep you focused on your why and the reason that you are doing this to begin with. And it truly does help you to keep going, because this spiritual journey will try to break you, and only the strong are going to survive. It has truly broken people who have joined this spiritual journey. It has. We lost people to the spiritual journey, okay? Just being real. So you got to make sure that you're understanding why you're doing this. The next thing I would say is you need to find, usually spiritual people suffer from some type of mental illness, I guess you could say. Some people don't call it that. Some people call it something else. But just so you guys understand what I'm talking about, most spiritual people have some type of mental delay. So that could be anxiety, that could be depression, whatever. You got to recognize that and be aware of it, because it could heighten over time. When you're aware of your flaw and the thing that may cause a delay with you that you've struggled with for a long time, mine would be anxiety. Once you're aware of that, you need to find ways to help that. You don't just sit and allow the anxiety to fester. What can you do to help with anxiety? That may require research, that may require therapy, whatever. You need to figure that out, because the enemy is going to use that against you as you climb the ladder. And the best thing I did for myself personally is meditation, gardening, yoga, some form of exercise. And you don't have to do yoga, and doing yoga is not you worshiping yoga. It's you taking care of your body, for the people in the back. Do some form of exercise. Find some type of hobby. Find something you can do to be creative. It doesn't require a bunch of money. Just find something you can do, okay? Something that can help with your mental health. Mental health has to be like almost priority number one for anybody, especially for my people going through a spiritual awakening. Your mental health is important, because like I said, psychosis is real. The enemy will come after you. You're absorbing a lot of information on social media. You're probably very sensitive to energy, and the enemy will use that to its advantage. And you need to make sure you're keeping your mental health in check. So along with you doing things to help with, let's say you have anxiety, make sure you're also staying clean and keeping your space clean, and not consuming too much toxicity. I talk about how it's harder for me to watch ratchet TV shows. As entertaining as they may be, I will partake every once in a while, but I can't watch them all the time, because my consciousness has changed. I'm a little bit more enlightened. So for me, it's better for me to listen to spiritual teachers, listen to audiobooks or read books, childhood movies or childhood shows. Like, I try to keep it cute and not too much ratchet, because when you start your spiritual journey, you're going to realize how much BS we consume on a daily basis, and you're becoming more sensitive to it. So you got to be careful, okay? Including the music that you listen to. Don't consume too much ratchet music or too much hip hop music. Put in some jazz or some R&B, some classical, like every once in a while. And I would even say just most of the time, your music needs to be high vibrational, okay? When you are having a spiritual awakening, your body changes and your appetite changes. So you may not be interested in meat anymore. You may not want to have dairy or sugar or whatever. Your body is going to change, which is okay. So regardless of that, make sure that for the most part you eat pretty healthy. Make sure you treat your food like medicine, or medicine will be your food, something like that. That's real talk. Make sure you're eating mostly healthy, okay? So one last thing, just to kind of go back to how I talked about isolation. Just because people are removed from your life, or you choose to remove people from your life during a certain season, that does not mean that you may not reconnect with that person later, okay? You have to use your discernment to know who deserves to go on this journey with you and who doesn't. Sometimes God removes people from your life because you were in the wrong. Sometimes God removes people from your life because they're not good for you and you don't see it. So anything could be the issue, but what you don't want to do, unless it's somebody who was like extremely toxic towards you and you like, it's just, you know, there's no way you would ever want to have a relationship with them again. Try not to burn bridges with people. If they're meant to be in your life, they're meant to be in your life regardless. But sometimes those people do come back around and they're meant to. Isolation is necessary. Yes, you're going to lose people, but sometimes those people come back and that's okay. But yes, I think that's it. I will do a part 2 if you guys would like me to. If I missed anything, drop it in the comments down below. But I hope that helped you as far as how to survive a spiritual awakening and what is life like after a spiritual awakening.